Welcome back, Year 5, for Lesson 5 out of 10 for history, with the Windrush generation as our topic and community as our theme. Let's get started with today's lesson. Let's make sure that we have everything we need to begin today's lesson. Are you ready? You'll need something to write with, a pen, a pencil, and something to write on. Maybe you've got a book that you can use, just some plain paper. Pause the video if you need to go and collect those items before we continue with the rest of today's lesson. So, welcome to our starter activity for today. Whose civilization is it? A classic game of who built what? Look at all these ancient people showing off their ancient building techniques and ancient skills. But which ancient civilization, the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptian, or the ancient Sumerians, built which structure? Stop the video and have a little think about which one is which. Maybe you've seen some of them before. I'll see you in a moment. Let's reveal the answers. I wonder if you got them all right. So you can see those columns are owned by the ancient Greeks. Ancient Rome is over there on the far left. That's the Colosseum. Usually we see pictures of it from the outside. This one's from the inside. Ancient Egypt is next. You might recognize some of those pharaohs' faces. They're having a pharaoh time of it. And last but no means least, we have ancient Sumer. Let's get started with today's lesson and remind ourselves about our theme throughout all of these lessons is about community. So last time, we focused very much on the thoughts and the feelings of the people that were coming from the Caribbean over to the UK. And today we're still going to focus on that particular community. We're going to think about what changes they may have faced in making that journey. We're going to start by coming back to our book, The Story of the Windrush. And as we read through this third chapter about that voyage over, I want you to have a little think about what this community was all about. What kind of things did they like? What kind of things did they enjoy doing? What kinds of attitudes did they have? Chapter 3, The Voyage. Peter Dalhern remembered the voyage as a jolly occasion. He thought that the Caribbean people were very lively. Some of the passengers did enjoy their journey from the Caribbean to England. Others hated it. Alfred Gardner from Jamaica was delighted to find that there were Trinidadians, Barbadians, and other Caribbean nationalities on board. He found it very easy to make friends with the other Caribbean people. He recalled, all you had to do was mingle. Mingle means to get in between, to talk to people. Some of the Trinidadians on the ship were musicians who played calypso music. Calypso is an African Caribbean style of music which originated in Trinidad and Tobago. It was popular all over the Caribbean. 3 of the Trinidadian calypsonians who boarded the Windrush were famous male singers called Lord Kitchener, Lord Woodbine, and Lord Beginner. On the ship, Lord Kitchener began to write a song called London is the Place for Me, which would later become famous. While some of the Caribbean people on the Windrush had already secured jobs in Britain, others were in the same position as Sam. They hoped to find a job after they arrived. Arthur Lee had no money and no job, but he decided to go anyway because it was an opportunity. George Macpherson spent some time on the trip working. He got a job in the ship's bakery so that he would have a bit of money when he arrived in England. He fondly remembered the journey. We had a fabulous time. One day, George was working in the bakery when he heard a noise. He looked around and was shocked to find a woman in hiding. George had found a stowaway. She wanted to come to England too, but she didn't have enough money for the fare. So she had sneaked on board and hidden herself. And now she was hungry. Many of the other passengers felt sorry for her, so they had a whip round. They put together some of their own money until they collected enough to pay the captain the fare on her behalf. Now she too could legally travel to England. Many of the Caribbean people on the Windrush had never been to Britain before. So Sam and the others who had been to Britain during the war told them what to expect. They explained that the country was in a bad way. The war had left London poor and scruffy. Food was rationed and the cities were bombed out. But the important thing was that there were lots of jobs available. Although most of the Caribbean passengers on the Windrush were men, many women and children came too. Mona Baptiste, a young Trinidadian, was one of the many Caribbean women who had helped Britain during the war. And like Sam, she decided to return and she came back on the Windrush. Now, do you remember a few lessons ago we had a starter activity about pictures that we thought were from home and away? Now, I've collated two from away over here on the left-hand side, those palm trees on these sandy beaches, and two from home. There we go, there's a picture of Cornwall and the St. Ives and up in the Hebrides. Today we're going to explore that further. What changes did this community face upon their arrival? Here I've split the pictures down the middle. Again, on this left-hand side, we've got those pictures from the Caribbean, and specifically pictures from around the 1940s. And on the right-hand side, we have images from our home. More specifically, a lot of these from Southampton, actually, and you've got the bar gate there in the picture with the cows in the middle of the street, High Street. Already from looking at some of these pictures, we can see differences in the types of housing that was available, in some of the different types of farming that were going on. But also there are still some similarities. Take a moment now to stop the video and jot down 3 similarities and 3 differences that you can see just from looking at these pictures about life in the Caribbean and life in the UK. Next, we're going to talk through some other aspects that are closely linked to that feeling of community, things that affect our day to day, things that bring us together, things that typically are part of our conversation. We're going to have a little look at some graphs based on the weather. We're going to look and think about the foods that the community from the Caribbean may have enjoyed and be expecting to enjoy in Britain. Now, when we have a little look at some of these graphs, I want you to make sure that you stop the video and have a good look at what the graph is telling you. So here's our first graph, and it's about the weather, about the Caribbean weather in particular. It gives us 2 different indicators here. Tells us a little bit about the temperature during the day. And these blue bars here also tell us how much rainfall we might expect in each month. There's a lot of information going on here. We can see that the temperatures are looking at being just under 30 degrees centigrade up to about 32, 33 degrees centigrade. And we can see how much rainfall that they expect. We can also see there's quite a bit of rainfall in the months that we might consider our summer months. And the winter months have much less. Is that similar or different to the weather in the UK? Pause the video now to take a closer look at the graph. See if you can answer that question. Here's a graph then to show specifically the weather in the United Kingdom. You can see once again this orange line that shows us the temperatures during the day, and that seems to take a much larger dip. We've got average temperatures around 8 degrees centigrade and going up to around 22, 23 degrees in those summer months. Already we can see quite a vast difference between the weather in the UK and the weather in the Caribbean. And interestingly enough, we usually think about Britain as being a very rainy place to be in the world. But have a little look at how many days worth of rain we might expect across each of our months. It's not very different. Whereas in the Caribbean, these summer months have a much higher number of days where rain is expected. We can also see on this graph, in comparison to the one before, that there's a little pink section here, and that one's for snow. Did we see any snow on the previous graph? Feel free to rewind the video and see for yourself. With these differences in temperature, we can see these graphs next to each other. I want you to think about what effect that may have had on that community travelling from the Caribbean over to the UK. What kind of clothing might they have brought with them or had available? Do you think they would have been ready for life in the UK? Feel free to jot down your thoughts and reflections at this moment. Here's another aspect that almost defines each community across the world. I've split the page here into two sections. Once again, on the left-hand side, some of the foods and dishes that might be more typical in the Caribbean. You can see there some fruits that we may consider to be more exotic. And then on the right-hand side, some of the foods that were available around the 40s and 50s in the UK, remembering still that rationing was in place. You can see the difference in the vibrancy of some of those dishes and how bright they are. Although we do begin to see bananas making a bit more of an appearance in the 1950s UK menu. How would you feel about arriving in Britain and not being able to get hold of a lot of the foods that you had been so used to eating as a child and as a young adult? Think back to a time when you've been made to eat a meal that maybe you weren't very excited about. That's difficult on the one occasion, let alone if it was every day. We can also consider the music that was available at this time and what these communities would have enjoyed. At the time, calypso music was very big and very popular in the Caribbean. But the more popular styles of music were more jive, swing, and big band that we tend to see in a lot of old musicals. There are two videos here that you can search for on YouTube that gives you a real idea about what these two styles of music were really all about. Have a good listen to them. Think about the speeds and the instruments that may have been played. So, your task today, knowing about these differences in cultures and communities, I want you to think about what you might do if you had to prepare to leave your home country, knowing that things were going to be different. Fill your suitcase. What three items would you take with you if you left your home country? What would you pack to prepare you for your new home? And explain why you would pack each item. So, here what I've done, and you can do the same in your notebook. Or maybe you'd like to actually assemble a suitcase. But I've thought about some of the categories that we've talked about today. Food. What would I like to take from my life in the UK? Definitely a roast dinner. Definitely crispy roast potatoes. Can't be without those. What about the weather? I quite like the autumn and winter parts of living in the UK. So I'm going to take a fresh autumnal morning. You know, when you step outside the front door and it's really crisp in the air and you can see there's a dew on the grass in the morning. I think something else I'd quite like to take from it that I think is quite quintessentially British and something I've come to enjoy in the past few months. It's actually some of the wildlife in the UK, and specifically the bird, a robin. I've got a little robin that likes to join me when I'm out in the garden, um, digging things over. I think I'd miss that. I think I'd also take with me a raincoat as uh, my piece of clothing that will remind me of the UK because I need it a lot here. But also, especially a thin raincoat, it's quite versatile. It can be used for lots of different things. I think I'd take that with me. Okay, so you think of your items. Think about your reasons for them. And you can display this in any way you like. It could be a diagram with the labels on there. You could physically build your suitcase and add little tags like luggage labels with your explanations on. Or you could write it. I've had a go at putting my thoughts down and I got a little bit creative. Maybe you'd like to do the same. I will pack my suitcase with the freshness of a British autumnal morning, with dew glittering on the grass and hanging like jewels on a spider's web. I'd cover the case with the burnt orange leaves from once green trees and watch as they reddened and change as they drift into winter. I'd breathe in the cold, crisp air and exhale a cloud of condensation and use the moment to prepare myself for the day ahead. These invigorating mornings would make me feel powerful and ready to face upcoming challenges. So there you go. There's my suitcase. Can't wait to see what you've got in yours. Here's a little sneak peek about tomorrow's starter task. Wonder which is which. I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.